Hey there, Darrell. How are you?
Hey, hey, hey. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's good meeting you, man.
Um,
As usual. All right.
yeah.
So I'm already recording, man. We go ahead and get started.
Okay, great.
All right, man. So you got the floor, man. You go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do now.
Okay, thanks. Well, first off, I'm really grateful to be here, so thank you for having me. And
For sure.
my name is David Haskell. Um, I'm a writer. That's the first thing. I mean, that's the reason I'm on podcasts. I write science fiction books, and I also write nonfiction trauma healing. And I'm not an expert on trauma healing. I've just been in the middle of it. So that's why I wound up writing a book about inner child healing, which is called Wounded Angels. And
Mhm.
a little more about myself. I am from America originally, but I've lived most of my life in Japan. So I've been overseas. Last year I was in Southeast Asia, traveling a lot. And I also play music professionally. I'm a drummer. And yeah, that's kind of the short version. But yeah, the main thing that I'm having conversations about these days is trauma healing and inner child. And so that's why I've been, coming around podcasts and having conversations with people like yourself.
Sure thing. Sure thing. First, I gotta ask you, what made you ship to Japan? What happened with that?
It's a long story, but as I said, I'm a
Mhm.
professional musician, so I play drums. So I ended up in Japan originally to play drums on trash cans at Tokyo Disneyland. That's how
Oh, okay.
I came to Japan. I was in Florida before that. I'm from New England, Boston area originally, but I
Uh-huh.
went down to Florida to gig at the theme parks at Universal and Disney down there. And from there was an audition for Tokyo, and I just took it, came out for 6 months, came back again for 6 months, and then things kind of snowballed. And I just ended up staying here. I've been here full time since 2001. Last year was the first year I was away from Japan, traveling around, but I'm back now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. I was just that was just the question. I just had to ask that. That was interesting. That
Hmm.
lived in America for a while and jumped seas to Japan. I just thought that was just a question.
Yeah.
That was the
I
one.
mean,
That's
it's funny the way people end up here, although things are changing a little
mhm.
bit because they're becoming
Yeah, yeah.
more immigration unfriendly, which is
Mhm.
kind of a global thing, right? But
True
Japan
that.
was an easy place to sort of settle in, and very comfortable place to be, and they were very very welcoming, and I was sort of like not really doing so well back home. I mean, I was already in the spiral of addiction going downhill, but Japan kind of in a way kept me safe because there's not so much like hard drugs available out here, and there's not so many
Yeah.
ways to get yourself in trouble. But at the same time, I really got heavily into the alcohol because it's a 24/7 drink all you want. Nobody's going to judge you for it. You can get away with murder. You can
Oh
misbehave,
yeah.
and so it turned into sort of a long, slow slog. And that's a lot of why I ended up staying. It did become home, but at the same time, it was also, I didn't have any place to go.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
Mm.
So you had mentioned in your email, you mentioned, of course, your trauma. You talked about trauma. So how did trauma and addiction intersect in your life?
Um, I think one leads to the other, although, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people in addiction, and most people have some kind of thing they can point to and say, okay, some things were traumatic when I
Yeah,
was a kid,
absolutely.
but not everybody,
Yeah.
not everybody. But and then so it's like, well, does trauma and addiction go hand in hand? Not necessarily. And the other thing is, some people get heavily traumatized and they don't become addicts. So I mean, that's
Right.
it does seem to have some sort of relations, though. I think to do with self-esteem and yeah, shame and these kinds of things, like things that sort of break us when we're young, and then
Mhm.
the path into numbing and not wanting to look at what what's going on, and it gets too painful, mentally painful, emotionally painful, but also physiologically painful. I've
Yeah.
been talking about this a lot. It really, really hurts in the body. You get the stomach pain and the heart racing and the panic attacks, shame attacks. These kinds of things can get really, really overwhelming. And one way to quiet that stuff is with drugs and alcohol and other forms of addiction too.
So with that, did you actually understand the connection between like your trauma and your behavior while you were going through it?
Not while I was going through it, no. I mean, there was a lot of denial. There was a lot of, oh, it's not that bad. Oh, this is, everything else is terrible in my life, but drinking is helping me. Like I feel better when I drink. Which is as I watched everything go down the toilet, right? So I mean, there's no seeing it when you're in the thick of it. I think you have to come up for air, start doing the healing work, which is again, Wounded Angels is all about that. Inner child is part of the healing work
Hmm.
that I've done. I've done a whole bunch of stuff. Um, but then it's a long journey to like seeing the relationships, and it takes time and it's
Right.
really painful. And when you get into addiction, you also have to look at your own behavior, which is really not easy.
Yeah, I can understand that. So like what does healing from like actual trauma look like when the memories don't simply, you know, disappear?
Yeah, I think the memories kind of get stuck. I mean, that's what we say.
Yeah.
When we say inner child, I feel like it's usually an event where something happened, or even it could be an emotional thing, like a panic attack or some kind of a
Hmm.
traumatic experience, and then you can't handle it in the moment. You don't have the tools, especially as a kid, and that memory gets stuck, and you bury it. Right, it goes away. But the thing
Correct.
is, it comes back up. It bubbles up in the form of triggers in real time. And the way that I sort of explain one example, and I should probably come up with a better example, but this is like, so say, Darrell and all our friends, you guys go off to dinner and you don't invite me, or you even kind of like specifically, oh, David, you can't come. We don't, like we don't want you. Maybe we had a fight or something. So, an adult healthy reaction would be, some disappointment and maybe a little bit of anger and like, what the hell. But if I react like in a huge explosive, like, I can't believe this, nobody ever invites me anywhere, everybody hates me, I'm not likable. And, these are oversized reactions. People say you're overreacting, right? But I say oversized reaction means there's more to the story, right? There's something at the root
Right.
that's bothering you, some kind of abandonment or rejection that you got early on that you took as an identity, like this is who I am. And I felt for most of my life until the past 5 years or so, I really thought I was not likable, not
Right.
lovable. I didn't like myself. I thought I was abrasive and defiant and difficult and whatever. I blow up relationships. I blow up relationships, right? This was a scapegoat thing, right? Because that was my role. It was always a scapegoat. Looking back, I can see that it was always a dance, right? It's always a two-way
Right.
street, and the relationships were unhealthy to begin with. And my role was sort of like to put up with it for a while and think that I had to like do everything. And then when I would finally snap and like get angry and say, and kind of like lash out or whatever, then, oh, what's David doing? Oh, what's wrong with that guy? He's freaking out again. You often see that with the people who react in that way. Usually it's compliant people who finally
Hmm.
stop complying with, and the other side of it is somebody who's doing some controlling behaviors. And there's different types of that. This all goes to codependency, which that's where I learned about inner child, was learning about codependency, which is another addiction, people addiction, right? Which is
Yeah.
something I had to do. And a lot of people aren't familiar with codependency, but that can be a real killer too.
Oh yeah, for sure. For
Mm-hmm.
sure. I've heard some bits about codependency too, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's really not a good sign if you get to that point. So yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
So looking back at, when you was in addiction
Mm-hmm.
and looking at yourself right now,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think you would actually change about yourself from back then from the knowledge that you know right now?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Um, of course, I have regrets. Um,
Yeah.
Most of all, the harm that I did to my daughter, because anybody in addiction is going to be doing harm unless they're completely isolated. And
Hmm.
I've spent years and years doing my best to make up for it. And my daughter's done a lot of work too because she cared about the
Sure.
relationship, and so do I. We spent the day together yesterday. She's 22 years old now. She's an adult, but until she was 14, I was deep in the addiction, which means I was doing harm to a child. So that I regret, and I wouldn't ever say, I wouldn't do it a different way if I could. I would have if I could have. Um, but all the path from everything that happened when I was a kid, losing my mom, having an alcoholic dad, a lot of emotional trauma, um, abandonment. My mom died when I was 4, and I learned when I was 9 that she had killed herself. So this is the kind of
Oh.
rejection trauma. Yeah, that's what Wounded Angel starts with, is talking about that inner child, the shame, shocked inner child that got frozen in time, like we were talking about.
Hmm.
And all that is, terrible, traumatic, painful, and awful. And the addiction was traumatic and painful and awful. And I did a lot of harm. But I can't look at the whole and say, oh, I wish I could have done this different or that different and the other thing, because I am who I am today as a collection of all the stuff that happened to me and all the healing work that I did and the amazing people that I met along the way who, kind of showed me paths and shared their own experience, because we don't do this alone. Nobody does this alone. You get people who guide you, you get people who help you. For me, it got a little bit too far into that because of the codependency. I was making like, kind of gurus out of people and say, "Oh, tell me how to run my life," and that's a lot of people get into that. Like they want somebody to give them all the answers, but in the end, I had to find my own answers, find my own spirituality, my own integrity, my
Yeah.
own sense of self, and my own self liking and self loving, which didn't come easy. It took years.
Since you talked about codependency, let's break that down a little bit. So,
Sure.
in your term, what do you think is codependency? What is codependency in your term?
Yeah. It's so hard to define, right? Even
Yeah.
if you read the book Codependence Anonymous, they even say we won't tell you what codependency is. You can
No?
There are codependent behaviors, and so you can kind of, just like, alcoholic behaviors. Do you drink alone? Do you drink more than 10 drinks a week or whatever? There are codependent behaviors, so that you can say, am I codependent? Am I not? There's different degrees of it. I say people addiction. And for me, it's kind of easy. I can see substance addiction and people addiction, codependency, felt very similar in my body. Like if I couldn't get enough to drink, I would feel uncomfortable and uneasy. Same thing if I couldn't get the attention from the person I was fixated on, I felt uncomfortable and uneasy. So to me, I mean, it's really another addiction. There's so many: gambling addiction, food, sex, porn, emotional. You can get addicted to rage and addicted to drama and all that kind of stuff. So codependency, I think, is an addiction. I've heard it described as I need you to stay sick so I can stay sick, which is in a sense that like the whole enabling thing when somebody has an alcoholic loved one and they do all kinds of crazy behaviors themselves to try to save that alcoholic, and they're just as sick as the alcoholic that they're trying to save, because
Hmm.
it's all unhealthy bonds and trauma bonds and that kind of thing. So I'm sorry I don't have an easier answer for codependency, but I'm
Oh, no.
still I'm still working it out myself. But I think that
Hey,
it's an addiction anyway. That's the one thing. If
for
you
sure.
are deep in codependency, it can really, really be distressing, disheartening. You can feel hopeless, and sometimes it can kill people.
It, no doubt, no
Yeah.
doubt. And these questions, I just ask like based on your opinion. You ain't
Yeah.
gotta
Sure.
be, 100% accurate on it. This is always good
Yeah.
opinions, good conversation, things like that. So I
Let
can
me.
understand you never have the
Yeah.
answers and nothing like that. So it's
Well,
all good. I can understand that.
can I ask you what your thoughts are on it?
What for codependency?
Yeah.
See, that I was gonna ask you, and see, I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you because this is what I truly
Mhm.
believe. Like
Mhm.
it could be very contagious. It could be a behavior that when like you said, like when, you know, you can do one thing in another person that you do with another person, or you can do it yourself. And there are many layers to codependency. Like it's kind of like I'm trying to think of a good term for it. It's kind of like something you can't get enough of. You know,
Yep.
you can't get enough of it. It's like you
Yep.
spend so much time on it. You know, you let this affect your brain. You let
Yep.
so many things with people itself. Like you do it with other people. It could be very contagious because these
Hmm.
people can actually look at your behavior and they'll say, hmm, I may be going through the same thing. Oh, I am going through the same thing. So
Yep.
I see it in him. Hey, I could do the same thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's you got the same problems. I got the same problems. So it just kind of just tags along, and that's how
Hmm.
codependency starts. It could be very
Totally.
contagious, and it's a dangerous
I
thing.
totally agree. I totally agree. And
Yeah.
it's, I don't believe in a one way codependent relationship either. I
No,
think the,
I
we're
don't either.
doing a dance, right? It can, healthy behavior is contagious and unhealthy behavior is contagious too. And we start getting
Correct.
sucked in. The thing is, I think water seeks its own level, right? So you're going to
Hmm.
gravitate towards somebody at the same relative health. If somebody's very healthy, and a very unhealthy person approaches them, the healthy person will just sort of step back a little bit. They won't
Yeah.
engage. They won't get into the mud, right?
Hmm.
But if you're a little unhealthy and somebody unhealthy comes along, like you said, it's contagious. You start going down together. But you can also,
Yeah.
I think, rise up together, having these conversations, talking about
Absolutely.
health, asking opinions about how did you deal with it? How did you deal with it? Oh, I had a similar situation. That also, I think, is contagious. So, absolutely, I agree.
And that's the kind of contagious I'd rather deal with. Like I'd rather deal with, somebody that's actually dealt with it and I could have that problem. I can actually look at this person and ask, hey, what did you exactly do? Like, how do you,
Hmm.
get past your problems? And then you could be able
Yep.
to learn from that person and then you can
Yep.
use that to pass it to another person. So very good, healthy, contagious thing. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
I like that
Thank
too.
you.
And that's very true. I love
Yep.
that.
And that's exactly why I wrote Wounded Angels, in fact, because the book
Hmm.
isn't it's not exactly a memoir. It's actually just a real time record of the work I was doing. I was writing down the inner child work as I was doing it. Right. And so that's it. For me, it's sharing information. It's not to tell you to do it that way.
Right.
It's to show you this is how I did it. And it was experiment, it was trial and error. And so if you read Wounded Angels, then you might try some other things yourself, and share information yourself. And maybe somebody else will write the next book, and because I never really do well with the how to stuff. I don't think, we're not the same. Everybody's unique and, we all have our different paths to get to um, emotional understanding, spiritual understanding, all that stuff. And so what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, but some things might. What worked for me, I learned from some people, and some other stuff I sort of experimented with it myself. One thing that did not work for me that some people tried to pound it into my head was toxic positivity. That
Oh yeah.
really, really, that messed me up
It
because, it's funny, not funny, but I had a very close friend who was dying. She was in
Mhm.
her mid 40s. She had terrible cancer and she was dying. And she taught me about toxic positivity. She said, I'm not happy. I've got two teenage kids. I got cheated. I'm not at peace with it. I'm angry. And when people say, "Oh, it'll be okay," or keep the hope, maybe you'll survive. That kind of thing is toxic positivity. And for somebody who's got a real the short end of the stick in life, and some people do. Some people have real deadly problems. Kids born in Gaza in a war zone. What am I going to tell
Mhm.
that kid about? Hey, let it go and be positive, and you'll be okay. No, so toxic positivity. Some people tried to drill that into me along the way, and I really tried to buy into it because it sounded great. It's like, just let everything go, be joyful. If it's not joyful, it's got to go. blah blah blah, and it's like, no, that's not the story of my life. And I like to be joyful, I like to be happy, don't get me wrong, but also, like, last year, I had gone through a divorce and my dad
Yeah.
passed away, and I was spent most of the year grieving, and
Yeah.
that was okay. And it was, I kind of beat myself up a little bit. I went, oh, I'm not enjoying, I was traveling, I was on beaches in like Thailand and Bali and seeing amazing things, but I wasn't feeling super wonderful or super joyful. And it's, oh, you should be more grateful, David, you should appreciate. No, I was where I was, things were rough emotionally and I was grieving, and that was where I was at. So yeah,
And that's the thing. And to prove your point, that kills me too, because we can you can sit here and you can grieve. You can say, "Hey, I'm not okay," and the first thing that people will say is, it'll pass over. I mean,
yeah,
why would
well,
you say it'll pass over if you
mm-hmm,
know that's not going to be the resolvence for us? This is not a solution for,
mm-hmm.
people that is feeling, you know, that way.
Right,
And
right,
I'll say
mm-hmm,
this because I want to say in June, um, June 26th, it was on a Friday,
mm-hmm,
just a couple months ago. I had to put my dog down. I don't talk much about it, but I had to put my dog down because he, was suffering. Um, oh Jesus, he was just he couldn't move, and he was suffering for the last few months,
mm-hmm,
and it was hard to try to juggle that and juggle work and then juggle everything else that I was doing, and
mm-hmm.
at those times around me putting them down, I was still coming on here. I was still having conversations with people, and in my head, it's like I'm not in the right mind frame for it, but I was still doing it anyway.
Yeah,
And you know, people can sit here and tell me, hey, he's just a dog. Like, look, 15 years, he's more than a dog, man. He's family.
love
That's
is
how
love.
long I've had
Yeah,
him. Yes,
you loved him.
yes, love
Yeah,
is love, and
mm-hmm,
you can't take that away. Like, I'm going to grieve. I'm still grieving.
mm-hmm.
Grieving is going to be, for the long term. It's not necessarily something that it'll pass over. You not being
Right,
okay is not going to necessarily pass over.
yep,
There are just certain steps that you take in order for you to be, in a better frame set. It's not
mm-hmm.
necessarily, hey, I'm just gonna, like you said, you can be able to go to the beach and do this and this and this, and you're still not gonna be okay. You're still not gonna be 100%. So
Right,
saying that is not going to help you in the long run. So that's why it takes caution to
yeah,
actually, you know, have these conversations, except for the
mm-hmm.
ones that really can connect and understand it. And yeah, that kills me too. That kind of behavior really kills me because it's not really in your place to actually say, it'll be okay. These things are, will pass over. Maybe you'll get
Mm-hmm.
over it someday.
Right.
Some of the things are just not the right answers. It's just not.
No. Well, it appeals to people because it sounds like a quick fix. Like, you just let it go and you'll be fine. Um, it, some people seem to be able to do that, and I do. And
Yeah,
I don't want to get too into. It's not a keeping score, but I would say
sure.
this: people who experienced real profound trauma, and I've talked to a lot of them,
Yeah,
it really affects you in a way which is much harder to process, much harder to work your way through. And it takes a long time and it's very painful. And I don't think everybody has gone through profound trauma. And I've talked to some people who seem to have a pretty okay time. They never were disliked by everyone, which that's a tough thing to be disliked by every. I'm not kidding. Like, all the kids hated me. I was bullied. I was disliked, and this kind of thing. Um,
yeah,
some people, very charismatic and popular. They had a lot of fun in high school. Parents were okay. And they say, well, I had my problems too because ABC. And so you shouldn't, everybody's got their problems, and but I managed to let it go. I don't seem to have a problem. It's like, well, that's good for you, and I'm happy for that. But that's not
Right.
necessarily everybody's path. And I'm not saying we have to go around unhappy all the time. I definitely don't want to,
Right.
but as you talked about grieving for a loved one, grieving for the loss of a life that I knew, divorce and whatnot.
Hmm.
That it takes however long it takes. And it's
Hmm.
true again with the toxic positivity. I think for some people, it's joy is pretty much difficult to get to. Like say somebody with terrible chronic pain, right?
Yeah.
I would never tell that person, hey, this too shall pass. You'll be okay. I mean, yeah, they do maybe therapy and they learn to manage it, and but would I have anything to say to that person besides, you know you have my sympathy and my empathy, and do you want me to listen? Because what am I going to say except let me sit with you, and because I don't have experience with that. I do have experience with
Right.
emotional trauma, and so I can sort of maybe guide. If somebody's healing, I can help guide a little bit with emotional trauma, but even that, it depends on what we've been through. It depends on our experience, and maybe we're just okay. Maybe for you these last couple months, I mean, good for you for getting getting into the podcast and getting through it and showing up for work and that kind of thing. Some people
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah.
and
Nope.
I couldn't at some points. And then at some points I was able to show up for life, but it was extremely difficult. I was going through like floods of really, really uncomfortable emotions and whatnot, and I somehow managed to get through it, but it hurt like hell. And
Yeah, for sure.
and this came from the sort of emotional brokenness that takes a really, really long time to heal. So anyway, that's what Wounded Angels is all about. And the thing is,
Yeah.
it doesn't sell very well because if I told you I have a solution for you and tomorrow you'll be fine, I bet I could make some money. But you know what I mean? It's like the truth is it's a beautiful process, but it's painful
Mhm.
as hell. It ain't easy. It takes a long time. One guy at the very bottom of my codependent rock bottom, I talked to
Mhm.
another person who said that they were codependent, and he told me, "You'll probably start feeling better after about a year." I
See,
wanted I wanted to
ain't gonna
punch
work.
him. I wanted to punch
Yeah,
him. No, well,
I agree.
I the thing is he was no, but the thing is, it did take that long. Well, I'm saying no. He was saying, I mean, he wasn't being toxically positive either. He was saying you're
No.
not going to feel good for a long time. And actually, he was right though, is the thing. But it was I didn't I was really, really in bad shape for like more than a year, over a year. I've been on this journey for coming up on 8 years now.
Oh
Since
wow.
yeah, about since the last drink or drug was coming up on 8 years, and the codependency stuff has been about 5 years. So but and even now it's ups and downs. I have good days and bad days.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
But
that that's not gonna change. Everybody's gonna have their good and bad days. It's just more
yes,
about focusing on the good than the bad, but it's not gonna change. You're gonna have good and bad
yeah,
days.
and I
So
think there's a lot to be said for that, focusing on I do I express gratitude. I do gratitude lists and things like that, and
mhm.
but not fake ones. I'm very careful. Like if I'm having a bad day, I might say, okay, I'm grateful that the weather's okay, and I'm grateful that there's food in the refrigerator, so I won't starve today. These kinds of things is maybe a little bit cynical, but I won't make it up. I won't say I'm grateful if I'm not. And sometimes it's just like you just get through a day, right? Sometimes it's just like
Right.
that kind of a day. If I get through it and I haven't done too much harm to anybody else, that's when what I'm better at now is not taking out my moods on others. And that's
Yeah.
something that I didn't have a lot of control 10, 20 years ago. And I would be so irritated. And you see it all the time. You see people at the convenience store or whatever taking out their mood on shop staff, and you can kind of get away with it because they're not allowed to fight back. They have to stay polite. It's like, don't do that. But, I mean, it's sad, but it's unhealthy and it's not okay. But I do
Spot on.
much, much, much less of that than I used to. Even if I'm having a bad day, you probably, unless we were friends and I might want to talk to you about it. If I
Yeah.
encounter you on the street or something, you probably wouldn't know it. I would probably smile anyway. I would be polite anyway. nine times out of 10 these days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get into Wounded Warriors in a second. Wounded Angels, I'm sorry, Wounded Angels. Let me get that in a second. But there was something I wanted to say real quick
Mm-hmm.
because when you talked about the good and bad days, I'm gonna say this real quick. Like
Mm-hmm.
my brother, he had contracted COVID in
Oh.
2024. Yeah, he had contracted COVID in 2024. So his mission from the day that he contracted COVID
Mm-hmm.
was to get better. He didn't know
Okay.
how he was going to do it, but he was going to do it.
Okay.
So as he contracted COVID, his conditions got worse.
Oh.
And when um, when he found out that he had COVID, he you know got the treatments for what he needed for COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and he was no longer you know had COVID. So that was the first step for him. He was absolutely grateful. Okay, I don't have COVID no more. So now I can start focusing on, you know, how can I, help myself through this. And the doctors would never, diagnose him with long COVID, which the other nurses and doctors believe that he do have, but his
Right.
main doctor would not diagnose him with that. So that was something that, even though he didn't want to accept, but he ended up accepting it. So he just started focusing on some other things that would get him better. That's when he started, excuse me, experiencing, you know, um, back pain. He already had the back pain, but it wasn't as bad as it was after he got COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And he started contracting that. He was constantly in pain. And all of his doctors just kept subscribing him with prescribing him with, different type of pain medication or muscle relaxers and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so he knew that wasn't helping. And so he actually went to see a spine strategist to, figure out what was going on and learned that he has inflammation in his back.
Mm.
So when he has inflammation in his back, that was the main killer of his day.
Okay.
His good days was, he could take a muscle relaxer, he's okay. He's
Right.
good. But
Mm.
then your bad days is, I don't want to take a muscle relaxer. I really don't want to get addicted to this. I don't want to have any type of problems, dealing with that.
Right.
So those bad days would hit when, his back started to hurt him. That was the main core front of his issues.
Mm-hmm.
It's like he could say, I'd rather deal with, all these other things, long COVID and, whatever else that was wrong with him than his back pain. This was brutal for him. So it took him years. I mean, years after COVID. So I'll say a couple of years now to
Yep.
actually go and get himself better. And during that fight, good days, bad days. He's had more bad days than he has good days. But everything is starting to look up now since he has, fought for himself. He has, dealt with so many other things,
Mm.
being a type 2 diabetic and
Yep. Yep.
all these other things. And he's,
Mm-hmm.
on the lookup. He's just actually doing what he need to do to fight for himself. So
Mm-hmm.
those bad days are really turning into better days. And
Yeah.
that's why it's the whole point of actually, you know, looking at the good versus the bad. Because people can sit here
Yeah.
and tell you
Yeah.
all day, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you need to accept this. You need to accept the fact that, you know, you're having this problem, you're having that problem, you're having so many
Right.
problems, you just need to accept it. He wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
take no for an answer. That's why he fought for himself. And this is
Right.
why he's getting better days. And that's what, like, I'll say, hey, if you're going to continue to feel in your mind that, you want the bad days to overtake the good days, then
Yeah.
yeah, you're really going to start accepting these things.
Yes.
But
Yes.
especially for people that is willing not to, advocate and fight for themselves, they are really going to feel that. But my brother, on the other hand, he was like, I'm not feeling this 100%. Like he can say, he'll admit, I'd rather be in bed all day. I'd rather do nothing all day. I'll quit my job. I'll do everything. But he is fighting
Hmm.
through everything he's going through
Right.
just to get himself better. And that's what, you know, I think most people need to actually see, understand.
Yeah.
Like, this is important right here, and I can't say, like, I'm impressed with what he's been through, what he's dealing with, and stuff like that. So it's been
Mm.
amazing.
Oh yeah. And I think that's a it shows kind of the difference between the power of positive thinking versus
Yep.
like toxic positivity. Because if he said, "Yeah, I'm going to be okay tomorrow," that's one, that's not realistic, but it sounds like he's determined to get better. And I
Yes.
believe very strongly in the power of positive thinking. And that for me, with the emotional and spiritual health recovery, was a lot like that because it took
Mm-hmm.
years, just like with your brother, the physical. And I think I believe there are four types of health. There may be more, but I think there's
Yeah.
physical health, mental health,
Mm-hmm.
emotional health, and spiritual health. There may be
That's
more,
it.
but the thing is,
Yeah.
like, the thing that's tough, I think, with mental and emotional though, is sometimes it sneaks up on you. Like I still deal with depression from time to time,
Sure.
and but in a clinical sense, like it affects me physiologically and it affects my brain as well. And I won't realize it. I'll just get really dark and start thinking these really dark thoughts. Oh, you stupid idiot, blah blah. And the negative self-talk and all that. And you get sucked into it. It's like a vortex, right? But as soon as I recognize, like, if you think through like the symptoms, like, oh, I'm not eating, I don't have an appetite, haven't slept well. Oh, wait, this is depression, right? And then as soon as I
Mhm.
label it, then it becomes more manageable, and then I can
Yeah.
apply the power of positive thinking. Okay, this won't last forever, and these kinds of things. But good for your brother, man. That's
Oh
really
yeah.
physical pain is so tough. I
Yeah.
really, I really
Mhm.
think it can really take you down fast. And as you say, some days he probably couldn't get out of bed, I imagine. And other days he
Oh yeah.
probably
He has
just
that every day
barely was
almost.
barely able to. Right. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, power of positive thinking, I think is amazing. Like we can do amazing things, and especially when you're doing something for the long run. And we're talking a lot about that today, talking about grieving, the loss of a
Hmm.
dog, the process of grieving, the process of emotional healing, the process of physical healing. These things take a lot of time,
Yeah.
and so yeah, it's a marathon. It's a marathon. So
Sure is.
if your brother's listening to this, I hope you continue to heal.
Oh, he will. He will.
Yeah.
He definitely will. Yeah. So let me get to Wounded Angels. There's some things I just wanted your personal thoughts on your
Hmm.
Wounded Angels.
Sure.
So, what does that title, Wounded Angels, mean to you?
Hmm. Great question. Actually, I had a stranger on Substack tell me I needed to change the title, and I would never sell any books because it's a bad title, and I should change the title to focus on other people or something. And I went through emotional stuff with that, like shame and whatnot. Oh, what's wrong with the title? And maybe I need to change it. The fact is, I didn't choose the title. My inner child did.
Oh,
That's
oh,
literally, it came up in inner child work. And I thought about it. I thought, is this kind of like, egoic or whatever, to calling myself an angel? I'm no angel, right? I'm far from it. I'm no saint. But when I think about the inner child, the traumatized kid, it really does make
hmm,
sense. Kids are angels. Like the way that I thought about myself and even talked to myself when I was 8, 8, 10, 12 years old. You stupid kid. I really hated that kid, right? But you think about if you meet a 10-year-old, are you going to think anything like that about the 10-year-old besides that he's an angel or she's an angel?
yeah,
Right. And that's the thing is trauma does that to a kid. It makes them think that they're no good, but kids are angels. It is never the kid's fault. That's another thing I'm very convinced about when you look at these situations with, difficult family relationships and whatnot, and you think, oh, the kid's the problem. No, it's never the kid's
mm-mm,
fault. So
never.
yeah, so there was definitely wounds. There was definitely yeah, the traumatizations, and so Wounded Angels just sort of came up out of that, and it was one of the inner child sessions where it came up. was like Wounded Angels. So that's what the book title means to me, and for everybody, not just myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you writing this memoir, you're writing this book.
Hmm.
Was you feeling therapeutic? Was you feeling painful? All of the above? Or was you feeling something different? How was you feeling?
Yeah. So I was doing the therapy, like the healing work, right?
Yeah.
For, as I said, for years before I wrote it. In fact, I'd had a writer's
Mhm.
block. I wrote a bunch of sci-fi more than 10 years ago, and I had a 5 year writer's block at the time I was doing all this. So I was doing
Mhm.
uh, drug and alcohol recovery, emotional and spiritual healing, and I wasn't able to do any writing. So when the
Right.
writing came back, I had already been doing inner child work for years, and then Wounded Angels just kind of started coming out of that. I was writing it as I was doing it, and I was still doing it pretty much every day. I don't do it every day now. It's more like as the triggers hit me. It happened a lot last year because I was traveling. If you really want to get triggered, you
Sure.
travel, because especially
Absolutely.
foreign countries. Oh my god! But
Mhm.
anyway, it wasn't therapeutic so much. I think it was a I had an inspiration to sort of pass it on, and
Mhm.
so it was more like it wasn't therapeutic for me to write it down because I was already
Mhm.
doing it. But writing it down was more the next part of it, which was sharing it. I think it's more like
Yeah.
the inspiration to share what was working for me, because it was really a joyful
Mhm.
thing that this stuff was working finally after years,
Mhm.
decades of pain and years of work. And yeah, it's starting to work. Not perfectly, but little by little, it was working. I was feeling better. I was loving myself more. I can sit here and say without cringing, I like myself and I love myself and I don't feel like I'm going to puke. Which literally 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, I couldn't say that without a whole bunch of body reactions, and that's trauma. Oh, that's totally trauma. So writing it down to me was, yeah, it was opening up the conversation, like being able to talk about this stuff with you and with people who are listening. If
Yeah.
you read Wounded Angels, then we have a connection because maybe you're going to try some of this stuff too. And I would love to hear from people who've read it and who've tried it, because and I've heard from some
Yeah.
people, and that it really had a good effect. One person wrote a review and said it was like nothing she ever read before, and it felt like I was inside her head, and it wasn't a comfortable place to be. And I was like, oh well, okay, I think I did my job, right?
Comfort.
Because that's
Yeah,
kind
you
of the
did.
whole point. Yeah. So
Yeah, you did.
mm,
So, I don't think I'd ask you this too. Like, you don't have to give nothing away or nothing like that, but this is
okay.
just you
Mm-hmm.
and what you were thinking. So,
Mm-hmm.
was there anything that you were afraid to put on this book or any
Yes.
page at all?
Yes. Yes. Definitely. There are um, a couple, and one of the oh yeah, so one of the I mean having to do with like feeling like I was like a dirty little kid, like I didn't have good hygiene when I was a kid.
Sure.
I didn't take
Sure.
care of myself, wash myself the way I should have and stuff. And that was embarrassing. And even now, like, feeling like this, oh, I'm not going to write that in the book. I don't want people to read about that. But it's like, we're not talking
Yeah.
about me at age 55 with bad hygiene. We're talking about when I was 10, right? And that kid had bigger problems than worrying about, going to take the shower, or do well in school and that kind of thing. So that was hard to
Mhm.
write. That was the last chapter that I
Oh
wrote.
yeah.
That inner child didn't want to be exposed. He was like, don't tell people about me. I'm ashamed, but I had to get agreement in my body before I could actually publish
Yeah.
it. I couldn't just do it and say, shut up, kid. There's consequences if you ignore the inner child for me. So it was like, had to be, look, is it, you didn't do anything wrong. You're beautiful. You're awesome. Do you want to be included in this book? And the answer was yes, eventually, but very reluctant. And the other one was more of a real world thing, which was I was kind of trying to protect my dad.
Yeah.
And I actually, he passed away last year, about 6 months ago, or yeah, no, sorry, about 9 months ago, in December last year. He was alcoholic. He was abusive. And I am the relationship repaired quite a bit when we were adults, and I talked to him 2 days before he passed away, so I'm glad for that. But
Oh
he
yeah.
read Wounded Angels. I asked him for permission to publish it because he was so prominent in the book, and he said publish whatever you want. But he did read it, and he said it did hurt to read, and he felt like I put him in a not the best light. But the fact is, when I was 14 years old, he grabbed me by the throat, as and maybe more than once, but I know at least I can confirm it was once. I think it was more than once. It was shortly before I left home. I left home when I was 14, and when I look back, I realized that's not a punishment at all. That's a threat. I could kill you. And I wrote it in the book, and originally it had his name on it, and I changed it to I feel a hand around my throat, but I didn't identify it as my dad. And I kind of regret it in a way because I softened
Yeah.
something that shouldn't have been softened. And part of it
Mhm.
was my fear of him. And again, since he's passed away, I'm speaking more openly about it.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, that was something that I did change a little bit in the book. And I just did the second edition very recently, like in the last few weeks. And I thought about changing it, but I was like, no, I don't think I'll change it because that's the truth as it was at that time. And that's where, as far as I was willing to go. But I mean, now I'm talking about it on interviews and stuff, so people will know when they read the book. But yeah, I just couldn't bring myself to call him out on that because that was so wrong. And so, yeah.
That's yeah. Yeah. Especially yeah, I know you probably ain't the only one that probably feel that way when they're, you know, writing these books and memoirs. They probably feel the same way too. So
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't be
Yeah. I mean,
surprised.
yeah.
So what do you hope someone struggling with addiction or trauma see from your story?
Hope.
There, there you
Yeah,
go.
I mean, I really, the last 11 years of active addiction, I was just a hermit, really. I had the shades were closed. I was 100 pounds heavier than I am today.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, yeah, drunk every day,
Wow.
barely working just enough to stay alive. I'd lost all my dreams. I lost all the music gigs, which was something I cared deeply about, being a musician and a drummer. And I was just hopeless for 11 years. It's really,
Man.
it's like, really? Why did I, um, but somehow I never really entirely gave up hope, and I'm not sure why. But and another thing is, as I told you early in the conversation, I worked for Disney, played
Yeah.
drums on trash cans. It's a dream gig, man. We played about $1,000 a week in Tokyo to play drums on trash cans, and I was just bitter, and like, hey, I was
Yeah.
like, I was heavily addicted and unhappy, and I just didn't enjoy it at all, and
Yeah.
I had no capability for joy at the time. But
Mhm.
just last year, out of the blue, when I was traveling in Bali in Indonesia, all of a sudden I connected with a couple of people who called a couple other people. They heard about my drumming and they knew the groups I came from and Disney and whatnot. And all of a sudden I was doing a tour all around Indonesia. You can see it on my Instagram, like
Oh
doing
wow.
coaching clinics on stage. I was playing drums. I was taking pictures with kids and working with great people. I became a brand ambassador for a drumstick company there. And it just literally, it was synchronicities all over the place. And it was like getting a chance to relive in a joyful, grateful way everything that I wish I could have enjoyed 10, 20 years ago when I had those opportunities. And I wasn't able because I was too unwell. I was too sick. So, I mean, you never, and I'm 54 years old and I got to do that. And I was just like, well, this is so amazing. I was so appreciative. I was like, here's the thing, like at Disney, people would say, oh, can we take your picture? And I was always, oh yeah, okay. You take my picture, like some kind of
Yeah.
prima donna, right? Where's the
Mhm.
gratitude, right? And in Indonesia, I would have literally like 100 kids were lined up to take my picture. And I was exhausted because I had performed for like 2 hours.
Oh yeah.
But I didn't, I was like, I'm going to give every single kid a picture. I'm going to smile. I'm going to
Shoot,
be
yeah.
grateful for this. It was amazing. Yeah, exactly. And so I could really enjoy it. So yeah, I hope that I can give some hope and inspiration to some people that are struggling and suffering, and especially if you're in the early stages of it, even if it's months or years in, and you still feel like things are crappy. that I did. I
Hmm.
felt rough for years, but slowly but surely, if you're putting in the work and seeking to get well, and in meditation, prayer, reflection, exercise, all those kinds of things that they recommend, affirmations, therapy. If
Yeah.
you need help, if you need professional help, look for it. Yeah,
Hmm.
it is. If I could heal, I think it's possible for a lot of other people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, have you ever written something that helped you understand yourself better?
Oh yeah, all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, like the 12 step, which I don't talk about too much in terms of like I'm not promoting 12 step, but if you read any of the 12 step literature, including Codependence Anonymous, um, they do these inventories. They do the like it's basically just writing down what's going on, right? You write down your fears, you write down your resentments, you write down all kinds of stuff, and then you kind of like look at you just examine the situations a lot more deeply.
Yeah.
What was I afraid of? What did I do? What did they do? And what am I missing? These kinds of things, and those really really helped me a lot to understand myself.
Wow.
And there's a structure to those too, so anybody that's interested
Oh,
can
absolutely.
look around for that stuff. But yeah, healing inventories and that sort of thing. Journaling can be very
Absolutely.
very amazing. I love looking back at the journals. I cringe. I do cringe because we're
Oh,
always
yeah.
growing, right? You look back and you cringe. I read my first book and I cringe because I wrote it 15 years ago and it's like, oh God, I'm a better writer now. But that's where we were at, right? So like looking at the journals, especially from when I was in a lot of pain, I don't cringe that much though. I feel my heart kind of breaks a little bit for how much pain I was in, and
Yeah.
same as if it was another person, because it does kind of feel like I'm looking at another person when I look back now.
Yeah, that do hit different. That do hit different because I can sit here right now and
Yeah.
I could look at an old relationship that I was in and I could have been the biggest jerk ever. And then I could just look at these old messages and I seen how much of a jerk I was. I was like, what was I thinking about myself?
Mm.
It was it was disheartening just looking at those old messages. I was like, man. And so I had to redeem myself. I was like, man, I gotta hold myself accountable to it. Looked her up
Well, good for you. Good. Yeah, I had a lot of
and
that. I
text
had a
her the
lot of that.
apology. Yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Had to.
But I mean, yeah, that's and we're not always our best selves, but when we start to heal,
Yeah,
then we have the opportunities, right?
absolutely. Absolutely. So I got one last question for you. And
Okay.
this is just an opinion question, of course, as usual.
Hmm.
So you said you're learning how to live again without pretending the hard parts were, tidy, so to speak. Do you think we created an unrealistic idea of what healing is supposed to look like?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I agree.
That's
I agree.
all over the internet these days. Like, and it comes up with because I'm always Googling this stuff too. So it always comes up, hey, hey, hey,
Sure.
here's a list of 10 things. If you do that, you'll be great. You'll be whatever. You'll be Zen. You'll be this or that. And it's it bothers me because I bought into it for a long time, and I think a lot of people buy into that stuff, and that's kind of preying on people who are suffering and in a weakened position, right? Because promising quick fixes and easy answers is not the right thing to do.
Nah.
I won't say it's outright evil, but it's not the right thing to do. But it sells a lot. It gets a lot of attention. It gets a lot of subscribers and whatnot. And these days with the quick fix and the quick video and the algorithms, um,
Yeah.
it's effective. But I think it even sometimes works in the short term because like that whole positivity, let it go thing worked for me
Yeah.
for a while, or
Mhm.
it worked on certain things. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I just lost my voice.
You
It worked
good?
on certain things, but in the end, it ended up crashing and burning because I couldn't just do that forever. I couldn't let go of the really heavy stuff. I had a lot of work to do on it, and I had a lot of
Oh yeah.
acceptance. I wasn't even seeing it all. So just trying to let go of the surface stuff didn't work.
Man, yeah, that's interesting. And there was some good inputs on everything you mentioned. But yeah, I appreciate you coming on and having this conversation with me, man. And David Haskell, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming on and having
Thanks
this
so much,
conversation
Darrell.
with me. Yeah,
Appreciate you too.
yeah, man. Sure.